welcome to EB Knits. My name is Emily. I'm a knitter and making enthusiast based in Orlando, Florida, and this channel is my outlet to share all things handmade, specifically knitting. And today I want to bring you my yarn stash analysis, rundown, final numbers of 2022. If you've watched any more of these videos, first, thank you so much. But also you'll see a consistent theme. I'm wearing my throwover that I just can't stop wearing. I love it so much and it's perfect for this time of the year. This is a winner right here, the throwover by Andrea Mowry. I highly recommend it, and I made it short sleeves and more cropped in the pattern. Final video coming soon. But before that, let's get into today's video. So in mid-2022, in July, I think it was, maybe early August, I sat down and I counted all of my yarn. I wanted to get an idea of how much yarn is in my stash, because when I look at it, it seemed like a lot. At one point, I was like, there's not much yarn. One bag full, and then it became a box full, and a bag full, and a little more. So I just wanted to get that under control before it explodes, because for me personally, seeing all that yarn overwhelms me. And I don't want yarn to bring me that feeling. I want yarn to bring me excitement and joy and pleasure. So that's why I decided to count it. I was inspired by Natalie of Knitty Natty, who now has only one skein of yarn in her stash. I don't know that I'm looking to completely eliminate my stash, but my goal that I have chosen for now at least is to have a stash of 10 to 20 skeins. I feel like that allows me to have a few sweater quantities of yarn. I can have sweater quantities in a couple different weights, and then I'll have extras for hats, socks, and those inevitable extra skeins you have when you finish a project. That is my idea right now. That can definitely change in the future. I'm not sticking to it 100%, but as of now, that's what we're going for. So let me share with you where I was when I last counted in mid-2022, where I was when 2022 ended, and I plan to do a couple of these check-ins a few times in 2023 so that I can hold myself accountable and just have an idea and keep track of my current stash. Now, of course, this is no pressure. I'm not saying that you have to eliminate or decrease your stash. If you have a large stash, it's beautiful. I envy you. I think it's gorgeous. I have a few different personal reasons why I'm decreasing my stash. You can go watch that last video for more ramble about it, but ultimately, it's just my personal preferences, what I want to do, at least for this year. Now, also, what am I talking about when I'm talking about stash yarn? It's anything not knit into a project. So even if it's part of a whip, I know what it's going to be used for, or I already started the project. If it's still not used and still not physically knit, then it's still part of my stash. So that is how I personally prefer to count my yarn. So when I counted my stash in 2022, I had 72 skeins of yarn. So that's quite a few. That is a lot more than I thought. I legitimately thought I had like 30 skeins. So I was just stunned, absolutely floored that I had 72 skeins of yarn in my stash. That would take me, if I used 3 skeins of yarn per month, it would take me 2 years to eliminate that. So that's quite a bit. In July, I had 72 skeins of yarn. 32 were for designated planned projects and 40 were for unplanned projects. So that number I really wanted to decrease. I could not believe I had so much extra yarn sitting around that I just didn't know what to do with. I intentionally, for the last half of 2022, used a lot of my single skeins of yarn. I made scrappy projects, I made hats, I made a lot of projects that weren't in my queue and I wasn't expecting, but I thought would be really good for what I had in my stash. And I was able to eliminate almost all of my acrylic yarn and a good amount of my acrylic plant blends that I didn't have plans for. When I was creating the rundown video for my last stash analysis, I realized that I didn't designate which skeins were 100 grams versus which skeins were 50 grams. So I basically counted only my full skeins of yarn. However, some of my full skeins are 50 grams, whereas some of my full skeins are 100 grams. So that, of course, is a different amount of yardage. I made a specific note for myself to differentiate between the number of grams that were in each yarn skein for the next time that I counted my stash. So that's something I took into account this time. So this time I broke it down not only by fiber type, so animal fiber, cellulose fiber for synthetic fiber, and weight, so fingering through super bulky. I also designated between 100 gram skeins, 50 gram skeins, and 20 gram skeins. So anything that fell in that 100 gram skein category was of course 100 grams or more. That 50 grams category was 50 grams or more. and the 20 gram category was 20 grams or more. Those are usually minis and leftovers. So I wanted to just get an idea of how many minis and how much leftovers I have, but I'm not counting them in my final number because it is such a small amount of yarn, such small yardage. So when I tell you my total number of skeins for the end of 2022, I am talking about any skein that is 50 grams or higher. That is what I am counting a full skein, and that number, drumroll please, is 57. So I did decrease my stash by about 15 skeins of yarn from 72 to 57 at the end of the year. I'm very excited by that number. Just for the fun of it, if you were to count how many mini skeins I have, it would be 69 total skeins of yarn. That's such small numbers there. I'm not going to consider mini skeins a full skein of yarn or anything like that. I am going to just notate that 57 number, which is anything, again, 50 grams or more. So to break that down a little bit further, 33 of those skeins are 100 grams, and 24 of those skeins are 50 grams or more. And then 12 are 20 grams or more, if we want to talk about that number. Furthermore, 29 skeins of yarn are for planned projects, and 28 are for unplanned projects. So I really dug into that number from the mid-year and decreased it, so it is about equivalent to the planned skeins of yarn. So it's still more than I'm comfortable with. It's still more than I want to have, but I feel a little bit better about that. I can see that number decreasing, and I'm happy about that. So I did knit a couple of planned projects. For example, this throwover in the end of the last 6 months of 2022. So in between the times I counted my yarn stash. However, I did purchase some yarn in that time period too. So that's why there is a downward trend, but not a really large jump, because I did buy some yarn. In August, I bought 7 skeins of yarn. It was mostly all fingering weight that I bought. And then in November, December, I bought another 5 skeins of fingering weight yarn. Those were intended for the mystery knit along by Stephen West, the Twist and Turns. However, I'm still on clue 1, so there's still technically in stash everything that's not knit into that half of clue 1 that I've started. So I have those new additions. However, I did, of course, as you can see, use a good deal of yarn. I knit a lot of hats. I knit a lot of summer bucket hats throughout the summer. I used some yarn for crocheting Christmas ornaments, holiday tree decor. That took a lot of yarn and some significant skeins. And I knit a few hats from stash as well. So I've really enjoyed turning to my stash first before going out to look and purchase yarn. I just think it brings an extra challenge, and for me, the challenge to my creativity is really fun and endearing. So looking a little bit further into these numbers, some of the biggest differences are I've increased the amount of fingering weight yarn I have, as I just talked about those purchases I made, and the sport weight is the exact same. I did not knit that project yet. My DK weight yarn decreased by just a few skeins because I used it actually in this project you're seeing here. The worsted Aran size number is the same. However, the bulky number, I had 9 mid-year and 0 now. Also super bulky. We were at 10 mid-year. We are at 3 now. So both of those numbers have decreased significantly in my opinion, and I'm very glad to see that because those are the yarns I'm not going to be reaching for as much, given how warm of a climate I do live in. The skeins that I have the most of at this point are actually fingering weight yarn, 21 of which are fingering, 4 sport, 11 DK, 18 worsted Aran, 0 bulky, and 3 super bulky. I do spin yarn and I do collect fiber. So I counted my fiber, but that is not included in these numbers. For the fun of it, I will share with you I have 3 unspun bats of fiber. I have 1 full skein, 100 grams of hand spun yarn. That is not included because I didn't include any hand spun or any fiber. And then 2 little 20-gram bits that were just practice. So that is what I have for hand spun and fiber. I do not know what I'm going to use them yet. I'm still certainly practicing. But those are the numbers for that. I figured I would start tracking that as well because I feel like the more I hold myself accountable, the more I can really identify and track my trends and patterns and what I'm using, what I like, so I'm not just frivolously purchasing, so that I can feel more comfortable with what I have in my stash and feel like I'll actually pick it up and use it. So moving forward, how am I going to track my yarn? I did create a 2023 spreadsheet. So this way I have a base. I'm just copying my numbers from the end of December 2022 into here for January. So I know what I'm starting 2023 with in terms of yarn and how it's all broken down. I am going to do my best to track the yarn I am using and potentially bringing into my stash every single month of the year. And I'm going to try and track it by fiber type, and then if it's a 50 gram or 100 gram skein of yarn as well, so that I can hopefully keep track of that. I attempted this in the end of the last half of 2022 as well, but I did miss a few skeins. I didn't always track when I was using a skein or when I was purchasing one and bringing it into my stash. So I want to do a little bit better of a job of updating the spreadsheet regularly, but I do plan on physically counting my skeins. I like exploring what I have, reorganizing if necessary, and just touching and feeling and fluffing up and remembering how beautiful all of the yarn is. I am ending 2022 with 57 total skeins of yarn in my stash. So that's really the breakdown of the yarn that I have in my stash. If you have other numbers you're curious about or would like to know, you've seen other people tracking, I'd definitely be... And my ring light just turned off, so I think that's my cue to wrap up this video because I'm not sure what else to share. But again, any questions, leave them in the comments. Until I see you again, my friends, happy making. Bye, guys.